Thank you very much. Now, I've looked at the book and it's titled The 5 Love Languages. And it's written by Gary Chapman and Ross Campbell, I beg your pardon. And both of them are best-selling authors. Those who are tuning in today have the opportunity and the privilege of looking into the secret of loving children effectively, which this book espouses. Now, the 5 love languages of children is written to help us understand how to nurture our children by lavishing them with the particular love language that they respond to. When you look into the book, it has I must mention also that these authors have actually, Mr. Chapman has actually written other books in the 5 love language collection. Those would be the 5 love languages for married men, for teenagers, for singles, and even has the 5 love languages military edition. What I've found interesting begins with the cover of the book. Now, I also write poetry and I paint. So the cover of the book I found very intriguing because here you see a little girl as if she's starting her journey into life. And that speaks volumes to me. She's walking amidst luscious green and she's taking her steps. Now, when I think of a love language, I think of what enables you to express the love that fuels the movement of this child into her destiny. And that's what makes this book very special to me. Now, the book has 12 chapters, and chapter 1 to 6, which I really concentrated on, deals with how to express and speak your child's love language. The first chapter talks about love being the foundation, and in this chapter, the author stress unconditional love. So we love children not because they are perfect, but because God calls us to love them, and that love sets a foundation on which the child springs to destiny. The second chapter deals with, we begin the various languages of love, the various expressions of love that make the children grow up in a unique way and in an environment of love. And these 5 love languages start with the first one is words of affirmation. The second one is acts of service. And I had a good laugh when I went to acts of service because that's really how I express my love, acts of service. So some children want you to appreciate them by the words you speak. They want words of praise that build their confidence. And that's what the author deals with in chapter 3. In chapter 2, the author deals with physical touch. Physical touch is also a language of love. Some children just want you to tap them, comb their hair, and while you're talking to them, you comb their hair, and that's an expression of love. They want to sit on your laps. And in that chapter, he points out that even Jesus encouraged children to come to him. And as the children came to him, he put them on his lap, quite close to him, and asked the disciples not to leave them with him and admonish the disciples not to drive the children away. Now, the 4th chapter deals with quality time. Some children thrive when they are given time, when the parents concentrate on them, maybe for 15 minutes, but the child feels that for that 15 minutes, they have your whole undisrupted attention. And that makes that particular child thrive better. Some children love the language of gifts. So the parent gives gifts, and the child feels as they receive those, the children feel as they receive those gifts that the parents care genuinely about them. Now, and the 6th chapter deals with the me, the one who offers and likes to receive acts of service. It doesn't mean that when children don't receive a particular love language expressed towards them, that they wouldn't thrive. But rather, what the author's pointing out is, just like our faces are different, our needs are different, our characteristics are different, so also children respond differently, and even adults, because the love languages spoken about here
How are you?
Adults and children as well. So I was saying that the love languages apply to adults as well as children. Essentially, if a child's love language is physical touch, you may give the child other types of love languages. But when you touch the child in a compassionate, loving way, like maybe putting the child to bed, and when the child is about reading a story, and just giving the child a tap of reassurance, then that child receives love and thrives within the context of that expression. It doesn't mean that the child should not be also given words of affirmation or quality time. But what it means is the child is wired to actually enjoy, receive, and be nurtured by the particular love language that the child appreciates. And then chapter 7 talks about how you can discover which one of these love languages is your child's primary love language. Chapter 8 deals with discipline and love languages. How do I balance, for instance, the issue of giving gifts without spoiling the child? How do I maintain the delicate balance between the gifts and discipline? That's what you find in chapter 7. Chapter 8, I beg your pardon. Chapter 9 helps you to learn how to apply the love languages to the children. Chapter 10, anger and love. If I'm angry at a child, when do I put aside this love language? Do I really need to put aside the love language? How do I discipline the child within the context of all that is being said about love? Then chapter 11, speaking the love language as a single parent families. Chapter 12, speaking the love languages in marriages. I think I would like to leave it for now and not say too much about the book, because the idea is also to entice you to pick up the book and read. But before we sign off on this bit, I would read you an excerpt from the book that really explains the book in the context of today's world. And this portion of the book is titled Love. The chapter deals with love as the foundation of a child's growth and emphasizes that this love in its application must be unconditional. That reminds me of God the Father's love. His love towards us is unconditional, and He calls us to extend that love to our children. And you know, when you really need this love, raising a teenager. If you don't disown your child as a teenager, then it's all rosy till the end. So I will read, and it's titled, this portion, A Word of Hope. Raising emotionally healthy children is an increasingly difficult task these days. The influence of media, including our ever-present screens, the rise in psychological issues such as narcissism, the violence and hopelessness that plague some communities, the decline, I beg your pardon, in the influence of the church, even simple middle class busyness. These things challenge families today. It is into such reality that we speak a word of hope to parents. I want parents to know there's no perfect way of raising a child and there's no perfect family. We all learn on the job. It is into such reality that we speak this word of hope to parents. We want you to enjoy a loving relationship with your children. Our focus in this book is on one exceedingly important aspect of parenting, meeting your child's need for love. We have written this book to help you give your children a greater experience of the love you actually have for them. This will happen as you speak the love languages they understand and can respond to. Every child has a very special way of perceiving love. There are 5 ways that children, indeed all of us, speak and understand emotional love. These are physical touch, words of affirmation, as we've already said, quality time, gifts, and acts of service. If you have several children in your family, the chances are they'll speak different languages. For just as children often have different personalities, they may hear in different love languages. Typically, 2 children need to be loved in different ways. Whatever love language your child understands best, he needs it expressed in one way, unconditionally. Unconditional love shows love to a child no matter what they do. I'd like to pause there and hand over to you again.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Rappel. That was excellent. Thank you very much. One of the things that really sticks out for me in the book, and I would like to ask you this, is the book challenges parents to understand their children. It's a call to understanding before application of the principles, because if I don't understand which particular love language my child requires, then I can't apply it. How do you see that from your observations as an educator, as a parent, as a community leader, and so on? What have you observed around us? Do we do enough to understand our children? Is this a society where we really understand our children? If not, why? What's the challenge with that?
I think that the challenge that we parents have, the Nigerian parent, the parent in a very busy world, is spending quality time with our children. Now, a child who wants you to spend quality time with him or her would see you on the computer. Now, let me try to practicalize this. Would see you, mom, working on the computer, and she'll come and put her palms over your eyes. She's searching for attention. She sees you on the computer. She does that, and you don't budge in her direction. You don't look at her. And then the next thing, she comes by and she taps you and runs into the kitchen. The next thing she comes, she picks up your book from the table and goes and sits down pretending she's watching TV. That child is actually crying out for attention. And the child may go into the kitchen and drop a plate. And the tendency is to get upset and say the child's name is Kemi. Kemi, why have you dropped that plate? That child would rather attract negative attention than not attract attention. So she's made several attempts to indicate that what she needs is your attention. And when we don't give that attention, she goes off and does something dramatic that attracts your attention to her. The tendency when she does that negative thing is to scold her. But in scolding her, you drive her away further from you. I think the main challenge of all these love languages that I see in today's society is quality time. The children need our time, but we also cannot really be blamed because mother has to work, father has to work. But what I want to caution here is working is the way we feel we can take care of these children because we work and we make money, we put them in expensive schools, and we're able to provide holidays. But that's not really what the children need. If we were to go into the minds of some of the children, and even as you converse with them, that child would rather have the attention of the parent. They'd rather you sat down with them, and attention doesn't have to be 30 minutes. It can be 15 minutes. But what they want is 15 minutes uninterrupted. And the phone is one of our big problems. Just even chatting with a child or an adult, we are fidgety because you want to use your phone. The text message is coming in, the emails are coming in. Can we pause a while and bring up and give these children the attention they need? That's one thing I see lacking. The second thing from reading the book is that I see in our society we can improve on is words of affirmation. Children, if you just hold up a child and say, oh, your hair is beautiful today, the child brightens up like a flower in full blossom. And then in that atmosphere of love and affection, you can actually probe into the child's mind, and your discipline is more effective. Have I got that point across?
Very, very clear. Very clear. Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, sorry to take our time, but I can't help but share this. I once interviewed a 9-year-old kid, and he told me that his parents don't read. So at the end, and I know the two parents, so at the end, after the interview, offset, the two parents were there. I said, your kid says you don't read. And then both of them just put their hands on their heads and screamed. I said, what's the problem? They said they always read, but they read on their phones. Yeah. They do e-books on their phones. So it was so impactful. The kids always see them with their phones, even though they were doing productive things, but the kids don't know that. They just see them with their phones. So it had affected the children very badly. They always thought their parents didn't read or didn't have time for them because they were always on their phones. So when you said that about phones, I was just thinking about myself. I said, I need to cut down phones seriously. I mean, it's something, it's a very big, it's a massive problem. The phones can be so distracting. The other thing I want to ask you, Ma, is the book talks about, the book links self-esteem with these love languages very powerfully. Yeah. What impression did that give you? What did you think about that?
Yeah, I can identify with that because sometimes it's good to drill it down in a personal way. I also thrive with words of affirmation. Now, growing up, because sometimes in trying to figure out what the children are thinking and what works and what helps, I try to go back to my childhood and see what affected me negatively or positively. Now, as a child, my parents, especially my dad, spoke a lot of affirmation, and you will see how the father figure has so much influence on a daughter, for instance. In my growing up, my father always, every word that came out was an affirmation. I can't recollect a negative word spoken over me. If I came and said, I want to go to Ibadan today, my father would say, that's very good. if I came back and said, I've changed my mind, I want to go to Lagos, he will say, whichever way you choose, the angels will go with you. So I grew, that actually helps your self-esteem, and it helps you develop healthy relationships, because the father is the person who has custody and authority over you before any. The girls are very influenced by fathers. The boys would seem to be by mothers. So I grew up feeling with a strong sense of well-being, a healthy self-esteem. And when it was time to get married and you were looking at different possibilities or different people who would given attention to you as a young lady, I was looking for someone who would treat me like my father did. So knowingly or unknowingly, parents, we need to understand that what we nurture and sow into the child's life by love language ultimately affects their sense of well-being and makes it easier for you to discipline. So when I got to teenage and a young lady, whenever I had an option to choose between right and wrong, you know what came to my mind always? I don't want to disappoint my dad. And that kept me in the choices that I felt would make him happy. And I looked for my dad in a husband. I looked for him in relationships. So I developed healthy relationships amongst my female friends, healthy amongst male friends. And I can trace it to words of affirmation.
Wow, that's powerful. Thank you very much, Ma. Thank you. Let's open the floor now. Please, if you have a question, please, as usual, just indicate, raise up your hand, and then we'll have you unmuted. Anybody indicating with any question? You can also post your question in the chat group. I'll quickly check the chat room rather, if there's any question. But anybody? Oh, what's going on today? Okay, maybe we all understand everything. I guess. Okay. Usually hands are flying by now. Somebody has a question. Timothy, can you just unmute your phone?
Yes, I have.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, please.
Okay, so I have a question, and my question extends to the other series, in the books in this series, and the question I have is this: how does one balance not giving someone a sense of entitlement with love languages? So, for example, somebody has the assumption that this is my love language, and then because you have that assumption, you start seeking for a sense of entitlement from other people, sort of maybe validate yourself and all of that. And when you don't get it, it causes some form of emotional imbalance within the person. So how does one balance that when raising a child, so that the child doesn't grow up, and maybe when the child doesn't get words of affirmation from somebody, then the child starts feeling demotivated? Because really, in the real world, when you leave your family, people might not really give you or respond to your love language the way you expect them to. So how do you balance that so that the child doesn't have those expectations from other people? Yeah, so that's my question.
Okay. Now, if you will permit me to go back to my personal example, because I think that's what I can identify with, and then perhaps in raising a child. What I want to emphasize here is when they don't be so worried about whether the child, let me use a child now, whether the child is acting with a sense of entitlement. What comes up, what you do when the child's, in this book, it talks about a child's love tank. it says the love languages are like fuel. You know, you drive a car, you've got to have fuel in the car to get the car moving. What the author does here is describe children, and indeed I know that extends to adults, as people who have emotional tanks. What they say here is, when you feel a person or child's emotional tank, in that space where the child has a sense of completeness and well-being, you provide the platform, you provide the fuel to actually build up on other aspects of your relationship with the child, including discipline. I'll give you an example. If quality time is a child's love language, and you know, sometimes when I'm reading this, I'm thinking, I have to put this in the context of Nigeria and the African child. If you take the child to football and you sit with the child and you watch his football match, and your house is maybe a 30 minutes walk or drive home, because you have spent quality time with that child, in the car, you can have an opportunity to delve into the child's mind. And in that environment, you unlock things that the child wouldn't tell you normally. You gain the child's confidence. You are a friend to the child. In that friendship, there is safety. You can discipline the child more effectively because the child accepts your discipline as love, as part of an expression of loving concern. But what we tend to do is be like a headmistress. There is a time to discipline. God loves us lavishly, but God is also a disciplinarian. So expressing love doesn't prevent you from appropriate discipline. Rather, it makes a way for effective discipline. So, and it makes discipline easy because the child will not, even if the child tries to be mischievous enough to manipulate you, a word of caution is better received than when that child is not satisfied with the love of a parent. Then they tend to be rebellious. So I worry too much about whether the child is manipulating. No. In my experience, even raising children, I have found out that if you can nurture your relationship with a child, you earn the right to discipline. And discipline these days is to be applied with wisdom. There is a 7-year gap between my second and last child. They are adults now. I had to change my method of discipline. With the first two, it was a bit of the headmistress at home. But 7 years, raising the one with the 7-year gap, the last one, I had to become a friend, not a headmistress. Because if you apply the headmistress, headmaster, they will escape into their mobile phones and leave you on the shelf clean. So I had to balance it. I had to balance with feeding the love language and then a bit of discipline at the appropriate time and wisely. And it was received and continues to be received in good light.
Thank you, Ma. Another question is here. Esther is asking, let me read our question. What can a lady who comes from a background of super love, plenty of love, do if her husband does not come from a love-leading background? It's a bit similar to the first question, though, but there is a difference. What can a lady who comes from a background of love do if her husband does not come from such a background?
I get you. That's a good one. Now, when I have occasion to speak to couples in courtship and counsel couples in marriage, I find out most times that opposites attract. But in that attraction, there is also God's wisdom. Because if I have all that you have, then there's no need for you. So marriage is two people who can complement each other. And so if you come from a background where you were showered with love, and you understand the love languages, they were applied to you, you got nurtured, and you're doing well. And the other person comes from a background that didn't provide such nurturing. I always say to people, please be patient with each other. No background is perfect, not one. Because in the background that appears to be disadvantaged, therein God has a purpose. In the background that appears to have been nice and rosy, he has a purpose. And so in bringing the two people together, he has a purpose. What do I then do if I find myself in that situation? Surely the other person has something to give. Where you have the understanding of love, they may have the understanding of business. So we are to complement each other. That means that for me, who has the understanding of love, I must now bend over backwards and offer that lovingly to help the other person learn what I have. And I also, in humility, should be able to recognize that the other person has qualities I don't have, and learn from them. So I must keep stressing that no pattern is perfect. Indeed, you learn on the job. We only have books like this to guide us and to provide knowledge. And I like what Mrs. Morgan said. She said, in reading a book, you can read a person's 70 years of life's experience in one book. And that is very precious. So on programs like this, and even in churches or counselors that may be not necessarily in churches, you find that no one person will have enough time sitting with you to answer all your questions. What I do is read up a lot, and that's why I'm encouraging some of those questions you're asking are actually in this book. That's why I'm encouraging you to read books. Read books. I have learned a lot from reading other people's stories. People like Joyce Meyer, I really enjoy reading her books. And lots of other authors who may not necessarily be Christian authors, but provide books that have... I love reading biographies because I'm intrigued by what sort of upbringing or environment or culture or society world leaders grew up in and what shaped their destiny.
Thank you, Mrs. Rappel. Thank you very much. So finally, because we are out of time, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being fantastic, out of this world, and 0 being rubbish, how will you rate this book? Don't be nice.
I would say 8 over 10.
Wow.
The reason for the other two, the reason for the 8 over 10, the book is easy to read. It's not voluminous. That is not to say that people should not read voluminous books. But I know that if you are dealing with the upbringing of a child, you want a quick answer. You want it now and you want it ready. That's what the book represents. That's what it provides. It's also got each chapter ends with suggestions and ideas on how to actually explore the character of your child and interpret it in the light of the love languages. It gives you practical ideas and suggestions on how you can actually go about the deficiency in a child's love language. That's what I really like. So it helps you, gives you steps on how to practicalize what you have read. Now, it's easy to read. The lettering is well spaced out. Those are the sort of books I like. The authors write with practical examples of, if they say a child's love language is quality time, you actually have examples of how that works in here. The 2% or the two that I wouldn't give is because I hope that a Nigerian can write books. Nigerians, we can write books like this in the African and Nigerian context. Because all I found reading, I thought, okay, well, some of these examples we may not be able to do in our own environment, but the point is the principles are here. And even with the examples, you can find an example within these examples that works in your own climate. All the 2% I'm reserving to the Nigerians who will author books like this that are directly relevant. And the examples will be, can you take your child to the Palms? Can you take your child to the water springs in Ibadan, Ogun State? Something like that. And that's it.
Are you a book lover or enthusiast? Do you need genuine and unique lifestyle products? Or are you looking for a place where you can find contemporary and a wide range of unique gifts for children and adults? Laterna is your go-to place for genuine and contemporary books and lifestyle products for wholesale and retail customers. We stock business books on management, leadership, financial success, entrepreneurship, personal development, and so much more. We carry children's fiction, non-fiction, educational books, CDs, and DVDs. We also stock Christian books on various themes, such as family life and parenting, church life and growth, spirit-filled living, love, sex, and marriage, to mention but a few. Laterna carries life and style books such as baby and child care, beauty and style, conception and pregnancy, crafts, and hobbies. We also carry adult, children, and teenagers' Bibles, educational toys, framed art, gifts, greeting cards, home and office fragrances, music CDs and DVDs, stationery, teachings, and lots more. Our stores are located at 12B and 13 Okoawo Street, Victoria Island, Lagos. You can also shop online at www.laternabooks.com. Laterna, your lifestyle hub for book lovers. For inquiries, call 0803 301 4462, 0906 0002 or 7. Chat with us via WhatsApp on 0803 301 4462. You may also reach us on social media via Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Laterna Books and Laterna Ventures.